Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to RCI TV, and today we're bringing you a brand new championship with Team Jaguar versus V12. Dusting off these old machines and bringing them out of retirement for hopefully some close and amazing sounding racing. Round 1 tonight taking place at Suzuka International Racing Course, developed in the 1950s and picked up as a Honda test track in 1962, and the circuit has seen modifications at least 8 times, including 83, 87, 2002 and 2003. Lap length just over 5.8 kilometers in length with 18 turns. I'm John Dalton, your lead commentator. Alongside me, Jesse Lee, and behind the cameras, Ash Bibby. And of course, a big hello to our live stewards next door to us. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, John. Hello, everybody at home as well. Welcome to a championship that will defy all explanation here and raises a lot of questions. What is better, a Jaaag or a V12 Aston? They both have a unique, distinctive, and adored soundtrack. You're hearing that in your ears right now. And I just don't know what we're going to have out of today. The Jaaag camp talked to a lot of those drivers prior to practice starting today. They said that they expect the Aston to get away from them a little bit here at Suzuka. The simple answer is the Jaguar corners better than the Aston. The Aston is way faster on a straight, and potentially the Jaaag gets better tire degradation or less tire degradation than the Aston does. So that throws an additional wrinkle in there. So on paper, these two cars may not be too great head-to-head, but in a real race, event manager Tim Ireland reckons it's going to be a corker job.
Yeah, it certainly could be. I mean, it's not often we dig out the older machines from retirement, should we say, in ACC. Of course, lots of races are destined for the more meta cars and more popular cars, more modern cars, even, of course, with the better TC system and ABS that we do have today compared to, of course, a few years back. Riding on board here with Jordan Daly, we're going to go for a lap around the circuit. Of course, 18 turns here at Suzuka, a long start finish straight, as Jesse mentioned. So we're going to see the legs on the Aston stretching here. Of course, turn 1, first turn, it's 2 turns in 1 essentially, counts as 2 on a circuit map. A quick dab of the brakes, a downshift, flick in, and then a much longer braking zone for the second half. And then the switchback nature of the S-curves. This is turn 3. 4, we then go into 5, 6 and 7 on the run up to the hill. And you mess one of these corners up, you get one slightly wrong, and it just throws off the rhythm and the sequence for the next 3 or 4. Turn 7 here, keen to get a good run out of this one. Of course, you've got a good run down to the Degner curve, Degner 1 and Degner 2, of course, turns 8 and 9. Typically very easy to pick up a track limits warning here on exit. The inside curve, can be quite nasty in a lot of the mid-engine, low-slung cars, but no issues here for Jordan Daly. He runs a little bit wide, not sure if still valid on this lap, but now up towards the hairpin, of course, turn 10 the kink, turn 11 the hairpin. Good passing place if you can set the car up right, and Jordan Daly fighting the traction as the V12 fires into life for the run through turn 12, up of course towards Spoon Curve, turn 13 and 14. It's a tricky corner to get right once again. Look for the tarmac on the right, brake down a couple of gears and put a consistent steering angle into the car. Try not to open the steering too much as the exit curve there unsettles Jordan Daly, and he now has to begin the run down to 130R with a slightly hampered exit. Of course, again, a very long drag down here, so we should see the V12 stretching its legs once again, and of course one of the fastest corners on the circuit. A quick dab of the brakes, down a gear, over the inside curve, let it run naturally wide, but of course not too wide because that exit curve can really unsettle the car before we brake, of course, into the Casio triangle, turn 16, 17, and then the final corner of turn 18. Again, crucial to get a good run, as we said, because it sets you up very nicely for your next lap. And of course down into turn 1 where we could see lots of passing opportunities. Jordan Daly to the line, remains in P6 with a 2:02.845, although not a valid lap. And of course with a few less mistakes, Jesse, that could be one very fast car to watch today.
Yeah, it very well could be. You should see somewhat a close fight between these two classes on the scoring pylon. Rich in chat saying supporting Team V12, supporting Shipston, as Manso can't make it. Otherwise, they'd be torn between the two. Juan and a lot of people in chat saying it's a Jaaag. You love to see that. Lettuce says, love both, but Jaag for sure. Absolutely, you love to see that as well. And a question was, will these classes be close? Rich asked that. It should be. I will tell you, in pre-practice, the quickest car was actually the 69 Jaguar of Andy Boardman. Right now, it's Lindgren up in front, a 201.847, but 3/4 of a tenth behind him, absolutely no time at all, is Boardman's Jag. And right behind him, Vulture Rybecki, 2/10 off in their Aston, and another 1.5 tenths is Raphael Huel in 4th place. So somewhat close up there, but still a long way to go here in this qualifying order. And look at Tim Ireland's car. Now that is a Jag in a throwback Jag outfit. That is like tasting a memory right there.
Yeah, very fond memories, of course, of the Jaguar Le Mans cars in the various guises, of course, of the silk cut livery and how it changed over the years. Of course, the white, yellow, and purple one being the one that we're more kind of familiar with, but of course there was a kind of darkish pink coloured car, all one tone of colour, and again silk cut written up the side, back when of course tobacco sponsors were, you know, allowed in the world of racing. Of course, a lot of days these days, even in RCI, of course we don't allow those types of sponsors or any kind of off brands of them. So again, got to be a bit smart when recreating these older style liveries. And Kevin Boss, another driver here with of course the Wheelie Slow Racing team, always in the dark blue kind of red and white colours of the Jaguar as he comes through 130R. A little bit of traffic ahead, shouldn't affect him all too much into the Casio Triangle. A quick hop over each of the curbs. Got to plant the throttle, get the car set up well for a run towards the line. But of course, got to be careful on the throttle because a lot of power in these earlier cars. And it's not the earlier start line, it's of course the later start line. So again, that run is even more crucial. And Kevin Boss with a small improvement there, a 203.370. He'll pull over, retire back to the pit lane, Jesse. Probably a new set of Pirellis, a little bit less fuel, and he'll go again to see if he can make an improvement later on.
Still got time in this session to make those adjustments if you feel you need them, and if you reckon you have a tenth or so in the books. And I would suppose a lot of these teams, a lot of these drivers think that at this point. I don't see a lot of the best laps out there. One of the common sentiments I heard pre-race today was neither camp is too particularly comfortable or certain about what their ultimate pace is going to be, what their ultimate fate here is, as Spoder Skrillex goes top of the board in their number 200 Aston. It's a 201.582. Mike Redford improves to a 203.187 in 13th place. Two different classes here, not pro and silver as you may be accustomed. They are separated out into what appears to be pro and silver, just to denote that there's two different classes here. Those classes will be fighting each other for a championship. At the end of this series, we will definitively know V12 or Jag. Today, though, it's all about bragging rights and trying to win the first race of the season. And of course, on top of all of that, you've got the driver championship to consider as well.
Yeah, of course, two different championships. Jesse Lee is going to keep it very interesting, of course, across the next few rounds that we go. 22 sign-ups were on the official grid. Only 20 cars have made tonight's race, and of course, no pre-qualifying for this one. So if it does pique your interest and you're watching at home, head on over to the website racerci.com and get your name down, of course, for the next round. As Andy Boardman dips a wheel at 130R, gets a little bit loose, but manages to get it back under control for the Casio Triangle. He'll have another 2 laps or so to have another stab at it. And of course, like Jesse said earlier on, fastest man in practice. Certainly struggling at the moment in qualifying. But lots of RCI regulars you'll notice on the timing tower. And of course, a lot of drivers, Jesse, not used to driving these older cars in the grand scheme of things. But one that we do know is quite used to driving these cars, of course, is Vulture Rybecki, a fellow V12 enthusiast. And of course, just last Saturday, Jesse spent 6 hours at the Nordschleife hammering it around. So if anybody is, warmed up, accustomed, and quite experienced to the older machineries, it's certainly going to be Rybecki currently in P2.
Rybecki did a 6-hour sort of dress rehearsal at the Nordschleife and ended up getting rewarded handsomely for it. Finished up inside the top 5. I think they finished on their class's podium as well in that V12. And as you say, they are just about one of the best in the business. In fact, they came across the line. They're back down to 3/4 of a tenth off of Spoder's Skrillex. And that is sort of what you would expect to see out of the 127 car, a car that we expect to have pretty darn good knowledge of this car. Matter of fact, he hit me up today and said, "Hey, do you like that on Saturday? Do you like those noises from my car?" And the answer to that, the only answer to that question is, you damn right we did. It's such a beautiful sound from that V12. You've got the V12 and you've got the low rumble of the Jaguar as well. And look at Raphael Huell, the leader of the Jags thus far, is less than 1.5 tenths off of the overall pace. That's quite close indeed. Aaron Jackson's going to have a quick dump back to pit lane. Now, Jackson might be able to get another lap out. Him, Ted Edwards, and Tim Ireland, all three of them, if they exit pit road right about now, but they're about to run out of time. That is what Jackson's done. They might just get around to get an additional lap off, but everybody else still on the racetrack. Edwards and Ireland are done with qualifying. No more laps from them. They will stay in the garage, and even if they don't, it is impossible for them to set a quicker lap. The number 20 is going to return to pit lane. Ficuscio in the 20 Jag has had an incident in 130R, and that will end their qualifying run. Everybody else, though, still on a valid lap, still come to the line.
Yeah, one of which, of course, Raphael Huell, who we've been watching since the spoon curves, and he now comes out of the Casio triangle with his run towards the line. First couple of sectors looking all right, but still, I don't think it's going to be enough of a margin to propel himself forward onto another position, and it's not. It's a 201.722 best, and last lap 201.767, so a very minor kind of loss there, and he's certainly got enough in the tank to go one more. Hubert Hauser here yielding to another Aston Martin. I think that is P7. That's Adam Romaniuk in the number 29 currently down in P7, just under a second off the pace. Again, a driver that we used to see quite regularly at RCI, of course, the Polish driver Adam Romaniuk, slightly faded off the face of ACC, I would say. I've not seen him recently, but great to see him back in tonight's race. And like you say, Hubert Hauser certainly setting himself up for another stab at it, of course, currently down in P13 overall. But Jesse, it's a very small margin to jump Ted Edwards, Grim Lilith, and even Aaron Jackson nearly for the top 10.
Do I want to know what a Tetzel worm is? Do I want to know what that is? That's the team name on Hauser's car, and I'm afraid to look that up. I said it out loud anyway, but I'm afraid nonetheless. Grim Lilith for the Xbox Elite Series 2 racing team out there getting it done in the Jag. Another driver who had a pretty stellar run in the Nürburgring race. And all these cars, they just got to the line. These cars are on a valid lap still. Spoder Skrillex has come to the line, and I think they just narrowly improved by 2/1000ths of a second to knock down the quickest time to a 2:01.520. 77/100ths back to Boardman. Boardman's in the pit lane. They are not on a lap. Neither is Rybecki in third. Fourth place Huell is. Neil Pimlott coming to the line now, and it is not an improvement. Ends up being about 85/100ths off of their quickest time. Pimlott's out. Redford is out. Edwards, Prosciutto, Stevenson, Malcolm, and Ireland. Everybody else still on a valid lap, including Raphael Huell coming to the line in the Jag. And it is an improvement. It doesn't move them up on the grid, but it's still a 2:01.687, and that puts them a little more than 1.5 tenths off the overall pace.
Absolutely so, and Top Shipster now to the line as well. Gains the position with a 2:02.660, just about jumps ahead of Neil Pimlott. Mike Redford got an improvement on his final lap as well. Adam Romaniuk pulled over to the side of the road. He has given up the final lap as well, and Grim Lilith still on a valid lap so far in the number 115. But Jesse.
But John, why is his team name Xbox Elite Series 2 Racing?
Oh, I don't know, Jesse. Is it a kind of play on the controller he may be using to race tonight?
I think it might be. Can they tell this was staged? I think it was so smooth.
I think we nailed it.
They didn't realize that.
No,
130R. But yeah, that's exactly the case here. We suspect he's on an Elite 2 controller. We know he's on a controller, but we suspect it's actually that controller. Let's see, is this an improvement for him here coming to the line?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely so. I mean, wrestling the wheel through the Casio triangle, of course, the twitchy nature of the controller, slightly less precise on the inputs. Grim Lilith to the line. It's a small improvement up to P11 as well for the number 115. So just outside the top 10 there. And, of course, the breakdown of tonight's times. And as you suspected, Jesse, of course, the Jaguar sectors 1 and 3, the Aston Martin sector 2, the fastest times there indicated, of course, by the purple on the timing tower. Times looking very close indeed. We've got the top 7 separated by just over a second, and of course, a small mistake in ACC can really lose you a lot of time. So that 1 second isn't going to be enough if you can't keep it consistent for the next hour.
No, you're absolutely right. The top 20 cars qualified, and keep in mind, it's not pro and silver. It's Jaag versus V12, but they're separated into classes specifically so we can get a class sort of championship run-up out of it. No championship points today by virtue of it being the first round. And I just want to say, this may be a friendly competition on a Monday evening for a lot of people, but it's not been too very friendly in the official race chat where all the drivers can talk about the race and what they're planning. It was pretty split down the middle, Jag drivers versus V12, but it got a little bit heated. Event manager Tim Ireland even said Giga Chad Jags versus Virgin V12s. And it was kicked off from then. Battle lines have been drawn. Feelings potentially rankled a little bit as well. And we're going to see if that comes out on the racetrack a little bit.
Yeah, certainly so. Of course, each driver fighting for the representative manufacturer, of course, Jaguar or Aston Martin, as we take a slight parade through all of the cars, while of course we do wait for the warm-up lap to get underway. Grim Lilith in the race chat also noting that they hit 10 out of 10 TC by accident in the middle of the spoon corners. So that could be why that lap wasn't such a big improvement as we might have thought was coming towards the end. Of course, Rebecca there in the connection lost racing car. Fingers crossed the connection holds tonight. And of course, 6 hours over the weekend in that car. So very familiar driver with how it evolves over a stint or so. Christian Lindgren here in the Sim Brothers entry car, the number 48. Again, multiple Monday driver, very confident in whatever they seem to drive. And Jordan Daly, of course, just across the grid in a very similarly kind of liveried Aston Martin, of course. Not everybody electing to spend some time on custom liveries for this one. Of course, the in-game livery editor also providing some great results. Adam Romaniuk here, the Polish driver, of course, the number 29. He will start in P7 alongside, of course, Tom Shipston for the RPMS X Ground Zero Racing kind of hybrid livery that we've been seeing a lot of the time here. And again, RPMS, a great name to have in the RCI camp. Always put on a good showing when they show up with multiple cars. Of course, Neil Pimlott alongside in a very brightly coloured V12, the number 45 driver. Again, Neil, a regular here at RCI with us. Across the grid, of course, Aaron Jackson, or Action Jackson, as sometimes he's referred to in the Kaiju camp. Of course, the number 99 driver there, and alongside Grim Lilith in the 115. Fingers crossed, no 10 out of 10 TCs today, but of course, Grim, the controller driver in the grid. We then have, of course, Mike Redford in the number 95 Aston Martin.
I've never noticed that about Redford's car. He's got, I think, all the places that he races and all the different brands that he deals with there on the side of it. I never really paid too close attention. I'm usually looking at this. It's all the accolades that Mike Redford's had, but I think that's what that is on the side of that car.
Yeah, it looks like all the communities that, of course, Mike Redford takes part in. So a very busy man in ACC. I'd be curious to see how many hours he has netted in the game so far. Ted Edwards in the red and grey car in the number 8. And then, of course, Hubert Hauser in the number 79. Marco Fucuscio with almost a Jaguar F1 inspired livery. Of course, the HSBC cars from the early 2000s there. The kind of green and red styling, of course, complements the Italian flag very well. Matthias Byron in the number 100, and then of course the Fat Stig, aka the Roca Poker, also known as, of course, Les Stevenson. Slight Valentino Rossi fan if you didn't quite get that from his color scheme. And there Les is on the right rear quarter of that car, looking very menacing indeed. And of course, Matthew Malcolm in the Matthew Malcolm, sorry, in the number 199. Again, not a lot of practice for Matthew Malcolm, I believe he was talking about earlier in the chat. Kevin Boss in the number 31 Wheelie Slow Racing Team, and again, Kevin's sponsors across the car. A lot of the time, I think all the products he uses, the Eau Rouge seats, of course, on that one as well. And of course, lastly, but no means least, event admin Tim Ireland in the Silk Cut themed car. And again, as you said earlier, Jesse, a very iconic livery, so very well done indeed. Fingers crossed, might even see some more custom liveries next week, and maybe some more sign-ups from these guys, of course, as we get ready to go now. The grid timer is forever counting down, not too far now until we get underway. Of course, Spoda Skrillex at the head of the field. Jesse, very accomplished driver, of course. Cast your mind back to GT4 and TCX, ran very strongly in the M2, and of course finds himself at the head of the grid today, of course beating drivers. Andy Boardman, we know, very good driver indeed. Jordan Daly, equally as good. Christian Lindgren always puts on a good showing as well on Mondays. And of course, Raphael Huell, another driver that's done very well in multiple RCI leagues. So it's quite a talent-stacked field to, take the round one out, of course, with the uncertainty that is with the new machines. Of course, a lot of these drivers wouldn't have driven them over a complete race stint. They're not going to know how they behave on, slightly colder brakes, slightly colder tyres, maybe heavier fuel loads along the way. So, you're going to be staring in your mirror going into turn one, just praying that it doesn't all unfold behind you.
Well, you look at the starting order, it's Aston Jaag, event manager Tim Ireland looking like a bit of a genius putting this one together. For anyone who clicked through to the video today and you noticed something was a bit different with the thumbnail, a little bit more explosion, a little bit more hype on the thumbnail, I can't take any credit for that. I ultimately am the one that puts the thumbnails together, but I did not do the art for this series, and I rarely ever do, actually, for Monday. It's always usually the event manager who provides me the artwork, and this is an absolute beauty by Tim Ireland. Photoshopped everything in there himself. I only added the text on top of it. We had a whole meeting about it, did Tim and I. He asked me, is it over the top? I was like, are you kidding me? If it was up to me, I would have put a couple of British flags on there, the Queen, now the King as well. I would have put something like that. Maybe a Greg's sausage roll on there. I thought he was well subdued with the thumbnail, but absolutely one of the more striking thumbnails we've ever had. You can enjoy that all season long, courtesy of Tim Ireland. Looking good out there for a competitive race. You'll remember the Jaag quickest in sector 1 and 3. In the middle, it's all Aston, and it's all Spoda Skrillex's Aston Martin as well. That will likely not play very well here early on into this race until they get sorted out. You're going to see cars over top of each other. These cars definitely have like an on and off switch a little bit, John. Some of the cars will struggle in the corners, the Aston so a little bit. Some will struggle in the straights. That will be likely the Jaag. There's going to be a lot of moving around, probably going to be some blocking going on, a lot of strategy here. And more than anything, I've always said this about Monday, but Monday is where drivers come to test themselves. You can race any spec series you want the rest of the week here on RCI. Monday, though, is where we're doing the interesting stuff, and it's where you come if you want to do something crazy. Maserati Cup comes to mind. Touring Cars GT4 is an excellent series, and now Jaag versus V12. John, I gotta ask, before we go green here, who's your money on today? And I'm going to say you can't pick Spoda Skrillex.
I would say, as a V12 enthusiast and fellow V12 chooser, Rybecki. I'm going to keep my eye on the 127.
Wow.
I think he's far enough forward that he could do stuff. And, of course, the 6-hour preparation on Saturday, I reckon he's got it in him for today.
Well, I got bad news for you. We've got division in the chats. We've got division in the box. I am all for the Jaag. Let's go, Boardman and Huell.
Certainly so. I mean, 2 and 2 in the top 4. It's anybody's race as, of course, drivers come out of the Casio Triangle, slowly trundle through turn 18. It's going to be quite a long hold, of course. The start line isn't until the end of the grid markings. It's not like F1 where the timing gate is further back towards the pit wall. So we're going to wait for the green flag to go. 24 degrees in the air, 31 degrees down on the track. It's going to be who can keep these tyres alive the longest. And Spoda Skrillex already using the 12 cylinders of fury to jump ahead of Boardman. And here comes Rybecki, looks to the inside of Boardman, backs out, thinks twice of it. Of course, in Suzuka, it's very tight going into turn 1. You can easily get your nose chopped and turned around. All 20 cars look like they've made it through safe. Hubert Hauser remains in the pit lane for the time being, and he is underway now at the back of the snaking train. But it is Spoda Skrillex with Andy Boardman pressuring him behind. You've got the Jordan Daly Aston Martin up into P4 as well. Daly's made a good start out of it, even jumped Christian Lindgren along the way, and Raphael Huell has definitely slipped back, Jesse. P7, P8 maybe for Huell, of course, as we come through to Degner 1 and Degner 2. Cars are going to jump over the inside curb, some drivers being a little bit more brave than others on the curb usage. As we said in qualifying, it can really upset the car. Skrillex there using all of the AstroTurf as they come out of Degner 2 and the run up towards the hairpin of turn 11. Nobody looks close enough to make a lunge. We've got the number 99 off towards the back. That's Aaron Jackson coming out of Degner 2. We've also got a white flag being shown. Looks like for the number, yeah, looks like for the number 75 maybe at the back there. And Hubert Hauser has already caught up to Aaron Jackson. So Jackson and Hauser are going to have their own little fight as we begin the race replays. Let's see what happened here. This is Aaron Jackson in the green car on the inside. Mike Redford carries a little bit too much speed and just into the back of Aaron Jackson, very unintentionally, I would say there. Jackson, of course, gets it back underway. Hubert Hauser is just behind him, but these two, of course, have lost the back of the train, Jesse, as it snakes its way towards 130R. And a mistake there from Jackson into Spoon 1. That's going to allow the door open for Hauser, and Hauser looks like he's understeering, trying to find the grip through Spoon 2 as well. And Hauser slots in behind, but the remaining drivers have made it through one lap relatively safely, Jesse, I would say. Quite well indeed for the, of course, the new nature of these machines. Not many drivers, of course, being all too familiar with them, and only one incident to really report, but it looks like the field has already split in two as well, with the number 100 at the head of the second train.
Yeah, that's exactly where the contact happened. I expected a Constantina effect in the Degners, and it kind of didn't happen. It was just one driver being a little bit quicker through that section. I could have sworn that that would have started with Ted Edwards, but it didn't. Ted was completely unaware of things that happened behind him, and he continued on. But right behind them, Byron leads that second group. Skrillex out in front of Boardman. Boardman has not gave him any quarter, but here comes Rybecki in third for Connection Lost Racing. They have caught up to Boardman, and this might be a manufacturer sort of international assistance here, because if Rybecki can get by Boardman, then of course, well, then they'll settle it amongst themselves with Skrillex and Rybecki. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. I'd like to apologize to chat, and I've done something. I'm sad that, listen, I'm commiserating with you. I would also enjoy a nice sausage roll right now. I do apologize. I mentioned Greg's not the chat. Got hungry. Now I'm hungry. Now I'm thinking about it, and I do very much apologize. Sausage roll absolutely sounds like it should be on the menu. Ash Bibby also wants one as well, our broadcaster for the day. Beyond that, though, a couple of incidents. Everybody has been able to get away from it. Les Stevenson has had some spot of bother because they're at the back end of the field. And when I say that, I mean they're absolutely off of the back end of the field. I'm told there's no real contact there. It must have been a self-spin of some variety for the Roker Poker. We'll see if we can catch anything. Nope, he's already back there at this point, coming through Dunlop and the Degners. So some manner of drama afforded the 46, and that has put them all the way at the back, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So Les Stevenson, of course, being slightly out of contention now. He's just going to have to keep it relatively clean and almost prey on others' misfortune. As cruel as that sounds, it's all you can really do as a racing driver. Of course, when things aren't going your way, you do pray for that, that big one to happen ahead of you. You pray for somebody to get a little bit kind of, ballsy on the moves into turn 1, maybe, or into the hairpin of turn 11, and see if you can really catch up. But of course, if Les has no damage, again, could be a godsend come to the pit stops, because of course he's going to be stationary for a little less time than everybody else, especially if they're beginning to fix damages, you know, from doors, bumpers, etc. Grim Lilith hassling Neil Pimlott all the way through the S's, and of course we come out now into the middle sector where the Aston should in theory be slightly stronger. Ted Edwards behind, also looking to try and gain on Grim Lilith in another V12, and Neil Pimlott is going to be staring at his mirrors as the terrifying nostrils of that Jaguar find their way to the inside of turn 10. Dab of the brakes from Grim to back out of the move. Neil covers off the inside of turn 11, but the old up and under, the old switcheroo, they're going to go side by side this time into turn 12. Of course, Grim's going to have to go the long way round, but the legs of the Aston Martin just pull it nicely off the hairpin, and in the mirrors, of course, you've got to be wary. Ted Edwards is coming as well. We all know initial T can be really late on the brakes sometimes, but no move.
Look at the Jaag's
spoon
grip,
one
though,
or spoon two. But yeah, as you say, Jesse, the Jaag certainly much more kind of planted, I would say, in a corner. Ignore, of course, the steering wheel movements of our controller driver here, Grim Lilith. But yeah, V12 again stretches his legs, punches the loud pedal, and away it goes. And here comes Ted Edwards. He's going to look to the outside of 130R. He's already through before they get to 130R. I'm going to say Grim Lilith had a slight lift just to avoid going side by side into that corner.
Yeah, they would have been communicating. They're sitting in a chat together. They would have been communicating that they may race for different factions, but they're still friends off of the racetrack, and they're not going to jeopardize that, especially early on in this race, early on in this championship, less than 10 minutes in. You know, if you're Grim Lilith, that's a lose-lose situation. If you block him, you could potentially lose time. And look at this. Ted Edwards is coming through this field already, looking on the inside of Neil Pimlott down into the first turn. He's going to get there, but can he pull it off? So many times the outside can prevail if he's allowed, but no, it's not going to happen. Pimlott's going to have to settle back in P10, and it's P9 for the Race Ventura driver of Ted Edwards. That was excellently done. Gets let through by a friend there a little bit, and he uses that momentum all the way down the front straight that he was able to gain by not having somebody directly in front of him, and gets him down into turn 1. Apparently not all the V12s are created equal. That looked absolutely academic, though. Of course, the possibility is that he just got a better run through that corner. Boardman has been passed by Rybecki up in front as well, so it's a 1-2 for Aston at the moment, but still the entire top three are within about 1.5 seconds of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So still quite close at the front, as you say. Of course, Spoda Skrillex with the lead over Rybecki. Boardman, of course, in third. Jordan Daly in fourth, and Christian Lindgren in P5 just behind as well. Side by side for Adam Romaniuk. Into spoon one they go. The Jaag round the long way. Raphael Kuhl has to take to the AstroTurf to kind of keep himself alive and in contention. But of course, the drive of the V12 off of spoon 2. We're going to see the legs of it here coming up to 130R, of course, past the alternate pit lane on the right-hand side. I believe that's used for Suzuka East, if I'm right in saying so. And up the inside, Romaniuk goes into 130R. Huell's going to try and go the long way around, of course. Lots of extra tarmac out there, but only some curb usage from Huell. Space given by both drivers there. Down into the Casio triangle they go. Huell keeps his position alive in P6, but look in the background, of course, Tom Shipston has now been brought into this mess as well.
That's some good racing right there. Some respectful driving as well from Romaniuk and Huell. And they're going to be side by side again. The pull of the V12. You can't escape it, but will he get clear down into the corner? He will not. Still there. Oh, he hops the curb. He hops the curb. Does Raphael Huell. Hip checks Romaniuk back into the clutches of Tom Shipston. That could have been a lot worse than it was. John, we haven't talked about this yet, but I think based on how many cars we've already seen go off the racetrack, I think we have to mention something here. We're going to see a replay of the hip check. I think Huell just gets a little bit of the inside curb. Oh, he doesn't get a little bit of it. He gets the whole curb, hops the back of it. It ends up in the lap of Romaniuk there. But considering we've already seen more than a handful of cars off the racing circuit, whether that be of their own volition or assisted, we've got to talk about track limits, and this is something right there. That's Grim Lilith with a little bit of contact as well as they're going by the V12. Oh, nope, he let him back by. In fact, is what's happened here. Grim let Neil Pimlott back through in the pink Aston Martin. We've seen a lot of cars go off the track already. They're going to be accruing track limit warnings. This could be a danger if you try to race somebody a little bit too diligently here, that you're going to run the risk of getting a drive-through early. And even if you don't, you're going to start racking them up. I think several drivers may be already on 2 at this point. It starts to be a danger here. You can't endanger yourself by overdriving the racetrack, but here we are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's probably wise to save some of these track limits, of course, for the end of the race, of course, when you do need that little extra bit on your opponent when you've been sat behind them for, you know, 55 minutes of the race. You can't under or overcut them in the pit stop. It's a bit of a stalemate fight. Could you be using those track limits where they really matter rather than on these kind of pointless fights at the moment? Neil Pimlott wide through 130R, side by side, once again nearly into the Casio triangle. Pimlott's outbraked himself over the second part. He goes, I think he's going to lift and let Grimm through, or at least let Grimm catch the gap again. And of course they now come side by side down the main straight. The legs of the V12 certainly kicking in there. The Jaaag just has no answer for the Aston Martin power plant under the hood. Neil Pimlott pulls away, and once again we go back to Grimm Lilith in P11, Neil Pimlott in 10th. And of course in the background, Matthias Byron now looking to catch in the fellow Aston Martin as well.
Yep, this race here for this position well and truly on. Grimm Lilith has already made it a point that he wants to take this position, but he doesn't want to do so illegally. He wants to do it without contact. That's sort of the way Grimm races. He doesn't really want to do contact. He, in my opinion, I've seen him do it more than a couple of times, Grimm has, where he has legally taken a position and there was a little bit of contact that wouldn't have been his fault. It would have been 50-50. And even still gave it back to continue to contest the position. It's just the kind of racer that Grimm is. He wants to feel good about the pass is what I'm getting at. And those drivers are few and far in between. I think a lot of drivers are just, they'll take it any way they can get it. Grimm, though, the opposite of that, over-under move here into the hairpin, and he might have a little bit of room to operate. Oh, they getting as close as possible in 200R, but the V12 again on the straight prevails. That's got to be very frustrating for the Jaaag drivers. Here comes Byron. Byron looking for a way around the outside. He's going to stance himself a little bit to the left. Can't do it. The Jaaag pulls in Spoon. He's trying to get in position as Grimm, positioning himself under to maybe take a run. He can't. He's going to have to use that draft, and the more immediate threat here on this straight is, will Byron be able to get a run into 130R, and will he take it? They're as close as you like. Byron pulls out a little bit. Nope, thinks better of it. You've seen a lot of that as well. The V12s can catch the Jaags based on their pace advantage, and here comes Grimm down into the chicane again, and he's overcooked it again.
Yeah, I think Grimm knew he was never going to make the chicane where he was braking and lifted off the brake and fired himself down the escape road, essentially, to allow Pimlott through. But of course that's now allowed Byron to split them down the main straight. Byron goes up into P10. He's going to gain 2 positions out of this, while Neil Pimlott, of course, drops back into the clutches of Grimm Lilith once again. And fantastic stuff that we're seeing here. Of course, wasn't expecting these kinds of fights at all tonight. I was expecting it to be a bit of a, like a one-horse race, Jesse. Drivers just spacing each other out, nobody really catching anyone. But of course, we've got 3 drivers all locked very closely here. And of course, towards the top of the field, Spoda Skrillex and Rybecki still within half a second of each other. Andy Boardman has dropped back ever so slightly, 1.7 seconds to the good. He's a bit of a cork in the bottle now for Jordan Daly and Christian Lindgren in the V12s that are, of course, catching. And then a big gap back to Raphael Kuhl, 3.2 seconds. And then Adam Romagna just behind him, 1.8 seconds. Tom Shipston, as we said, getting in on that fight. And we start seeing the first of the penalties coming through. We've had a few stewards reports already. Lap 1, turn 8, involving the 95 and the 99 was deemed a racing incident. Lap 4, turn 18, involving the 45 and the 115. That's Neil Pimlott. And of course, Grimm Lilith taking chunks out of each other. Racing incident, minor contact. We then see a lap 5, turn 4, involving the 21 and the 29. It's a 5 seconds for the 21 for avoidable contact. That's of course Raphael Kuhl. Yeah, meanwhile, we see Jordan Daly going the long way round at 130R. Andy Boorman on the inside, bounces over the curb, loses the rear end, and Christian Lindgren comes through, splits the 2 of them down into the Casio triangle. Jordan Daly still on the defensive side of the inside. Christian Lindgren having none of it over the inside curb. There's contact between the 2 Astons. We've got friendly fire going on. We've got Andy Boorman nearly losing the rear end through 130R, and 2 Astons are now going to go side by side into turn 1.
I give a huge amount of credit to Andy Boardman there. He could have leaned on Jordan Daly. Good Lord knows they've done that in the past, but he does it all, and he comes over a little bit, does Lindgren. Did he not know that Daly was still there? Daly still down the inside for the first corner, and he's going to be able to get it back, and all of a sudden back into the third, well, they're in fifth, but they're third in line here is Boardman, who has somehow gained that time back. But I was going to say, hats off to Andy Boardman. He could have leaned on Daly there a little bit. They've had a lot of contact in their history, those two drivers, but he doesn't. He nearly wrecks himself trying to stay off the 197, and that was a scary moment, and probably looked rather easier than it was to save that car when it got into a slide like that. Jordan Daly, your quickest car on the racetrack right now, just took fastest lap of the race and now up into P3. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Astons.
Aston Martin certainly looking very strong, but Andy Boardman and Raphael Huell, of course, are trying to gain each other's backs with the Jaguar. Maybe they can work together to see if they can progress through the field in the middle stages of this race. Eagle Eye viewers will notice the pit window has just opened. At the top of your screen, you see a two clocks now counting down. Of course, the one on the right just showing over 29 minutes. Drivers have to come down the pit lane for their mandatory stop within this 30-minute window. Of course, the only rule set we have is to add 1 litre of fuel. Tyres completely up to the driver, so it does open the debate as we see the replay here between Lindgren, Daly and Boardman all getting into each other nearly in the Casio triangle. Of course, we're about to see an action replay here as we cut back to the action. Lindgren's going to go the long way around again. Daly on the defensive, and Lindgren cuts off the brakes a little bit early, tries to do the old switcheroo and gets a better drive off the corner, but I think Daly has done just enough to keep Christian Lindgren behind at the moment. But the powerhouse that is the V12, Daly leading the train down the start-finish straight, trying to break the toe. Andy Boardman's at the back trying to get the most of the toe as they go side by side now into turn 1. Be very careful, boys. Of course, we're all fighting for manufacturer's honours here.
They don't
today,
care anymore.
Lindgren certainly slots in behind. I don't think they do care anymore, Jesse. I'm with you on that one, but as I was saying, of course, the mandatory pit stop, 1 litre of fuel, tyres being, completely up to the drivers. So it's a bit of a split strat, isn't it? Do you take half the fuel and a set of tyres through the race, or do you take the whole load of fuel at the beginning and, of course, try and keep the same set of tyres alive all the way to the end? Of course, air temperature 24, track temperature 32 today, Jesse. I think it might be beneficial if, of course, you do take a set of tyres halfway through the race, because you're going to be much faster in those dying kind of 15-20 minutes of the race.
Yeah, talking to the Jag drivers, that's kind of what they said. They reckon that they might not have to, though, because they figure the V12 is a lot harsher on their tires than the Jag is, which is interesting considering the more grip that the Jag has in the corners. You'd expect it to be going faster, to be chewing off more rubber, but that's not entirely true. The V12 apparently has less sophisticated aero, and it's scrubbing the tires more, going slower in the corners, and that might put them in a precarious position if they don't change tires. I would say that some of the Jags, especially the ones that are handling well, might not. I think a lot of the Astons will be screaming for tires based on some of the reports that we have gotten. Eagle-eyed viewers will also notice we have lost a car. We've lost Matthew Malcolm. Matthew Malcolm was feeling under the weather today, said that he just didn't have the strength, but he was going to give it a go anyway, and I think the man flu has claimed him for the day. Malcolm, if you can hear us, feel better, buddy. We hope to see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So best wishes going out to you. Hopefully a speedy recovery and we can see you back on the grid for another hours of action next week. Meanwhile, Neil Pimlott and Grim Lilith have been busy once again coming out of the hairpin turn 11. This is through turn 12. I'm not sure if there was contact here or whether our tools picked something up, but of course they were side by side, and of course it looks like Neil Pimlott has peeled away somewhere from Grim Lilith. I was waiting for the pit light to come up. There he is. He's just out of shot, actually. The helicam being a little bit deceiving, of course, after these guys were so close together. This fight has now been broken up ever so slightly. Matthias Byron, of course, ahead of them 1 second to the good. Managed to split the two while they were squabbling over track position into the Casio triangle, but the Jags certainly looking a little bit out of contention here, Jesse. The Aston looking like the more dominant car with 20 minutes into the race, but could it evolve differently? Of course, you mentioned earlier on the Jag looks after its tyres that little bit better maybe than the Aston, and could the Jag come into play in the final stages of the race? But Spoda Skrillex out front, Rybecki just behind in the number 127. These guys are looking very confident in the way they're driving. The gap hasn't really, expanded. It hasn't really closed. It's remained fairly consistent between the two. But more importantly, they are driving away from Jordan Daly, 5.2 seconds to the good behind, of course, after their squabbles between themselves and Christian Lindgren, and of course Andy Borman in the number 69. So you've kind of got a 2 and a pack of 3 beginning to form, and of course everybody else slightly thinning out, but pit stop still on the cards, Jesse, so time to be won in the pit lane certainly today.
Yep, certainly is. And you talk about it all being Aston Martin right about now, and it certainly is. But we hand out hardware after 60 minutes of racing, not 20 here in this series. So you never know what's going to happen. We're going to learn a lot here today in this race. What we've learned is the straight line speed here at Suzuka has shown up just a little bit more than the cornering ability in the twisties. And I don't think that's a real surprise to a lot of people. The straight line speed has been king here for quite a long time. We get some of these other racetracks, though, that are a bit more twisty, and there are no long straights. I wonder if it might not be the reverse of the argument. And then again, we don't know what we're going to see here today. And if these two drivers continue to race each other as hard as they have done thus far, some of those Jags might be able to sneak through after a potential incident. This has gotten personal between Daly and Lindgren here. They have not pulled any punches. They're not racing like they're on the same team. They are racing for an overall podium, and keep in mind the overarching championship of the two different manufacturers, but also a driver's title to be awarded as well. So there's still bragging rights for individuals here, and that's kind of what they're fighting for here. And I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you? Lindgren can see Boardman behind him. Currently not really a threat. If he's able to pull off this move, get back by Jordan Daly, why wouldn't you? Go ahead, give it a shot. You're not really putting yourself at risk. He's having a look here. After we get through the Degners, he's in there. Is Lindgren. It's going to be really close into the hairpin. Inside should favor Daly, and it does cover the crossover move, and there you have it. As she goes through that particular section of the racetrack in 200R, he may have a sniff and a look up here in Spoon, though.
It's going to be a brave move around the outside of the hairpin, and he's going to have to go the long way around once again into Spoon. Daly covers off the inside, riding on board, of course, with the splitter cam of Christian Lindgren seeing underneath the massive rear wing of the V12 Aston. Of course, no rear diffuser on this car, so all the downforce purely comes from that massive tool wing on the back of the boot lid. And of course, it's a very tricky car sometimes to get around these corners, as the Jag is proving with the much bigger diffuser and wing setup on that car. Looks much more stable, but of course the Aston does do better in a straight line. Christian Lindgren this time not close enough to go into the Casio triangle. Andy Boardman holding formation as well behind, probably waiting.
How much that Jag pulls though in the corner.
Yeah, just in the corners it closes up so much, but then flip
John,
side.
he was over a second behind after Spoon, or excuse me, at the end of Spoon in 130R. After we hit the triangle, he was right back to the bumper.
Yeah, half a second to the good on the timing gate as they cross the line, and Lindgren looking all the time for a gap around Daly, and Daly's not making this one easy, putting up a fantastic defense so far on the Sim Brothers Racing number 48 entry. And Andy Boardman is just holding station at this point, Jesse. He is hoping that Daly and Lindgren come to blows and he can sneak on by once again up into that bottom step of the podium.
You never want to see your competitors take each other out. You never want to win on a technicality, all that stuff that you tell people. But at the same time, whenever it's class warfare like this is, Andy Boardman's sitting there like, yeah, go on, Lindgren, race him a little bit hard. Go ahead, Daly, keep shutting the door. Because you know at that point, if they have an incident, they have contact that shoves either one of them wide, as close as Boardman is, you're getting by both of them, you're going to go from 5th to 3rd in an instant.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to net some good championship points as well, just by these two coming to blows. Daly, of course, trying to go very defensive into the hairpin, almost shallows himself off a little bit too much through the hairpin indeed, but Christian Lindgren equally doing the same, so no harm, no foul here. But of course, these guys still yet to make their pit stop. Only one driver has made their mandatory stop and made it stick, and that's Raphael Huell down in P17. Overall in the number 21. Of course, he had an additional 5 seconds to his name from the steward, so again, not accurate of a fast pit stop time on the board for himself. A couple of more stewards reports coming through. We've got a lap 6, turn 12 involving the 115 and the 45 again. That's Neil Pimlott and Grim Lilith, deemed another racing incident minor contact. We then got an incident lap 7, turn 18 involving the 197 and the 48. That's Jordan Daly and Christian Lindgren, of course, when they came to blows through the last corner. It's a warning for the number 197 of Jordan Daly for avoidable contact. So stewards going to be looking a little bit more closely maybe at Daly in the next incident going. Meanwhile, Mike Redford trying to hunt down Kevin Boss here, the number 31 Jaguar, just ahead. Of course, Mike Redford behind there after a little bit of contact with Aaron Jackson in the opening lap. Of course, deemed a racing incident, I believe, by the stewards. Unavoidable contact.
Oh, he's off!
He's into the grass, certainly manages to get it pulled back on, though. The ACC physics sometimes do pull you off when you do dip a wheel in the grass. So Redford there, just a little bit too much throttle, not enough steering input, and certainly managed to keep it under control and back underway. But a good time loss there to Kevin Boss. I think Kevin can now breathe a little sigh of relief that Mike Redford isn't closing in as much as he was, and especially through the first sector where the Jag is much stronger. Kevin should be able to extend that lead that little bit more.
Kevin Boss, 4th place of the Jaguars right now. You got Andy Boardman leading Lilith, leading Fasciuto, the top 3 in that category. Skrillex, Rybecki, and Daly, the top 3 in the Aston class as well. So interesting racing around the racetrack. Some Astons fighting over positions for overall importance, and in Class 2 as well. Boardman is waiting in the wings a little bit, and everybody in the mid-pack just sort of feeling it out here. And like John said, the only pit stop we've had is from Raphael Hill. We can't even make heads or tails of that due to the 5-second penalty that was received. Tom Shipston from RPMS Sim Sport sort of hanging out here inside the top 10, trying to figure out Romaniuk in front of them. Seems to be dropping just a little bit of pace to Tom in 7th. And right behind them, well, I say right behind them, 2.8 seconds behind them, is Ted Edwards, who has settled in to 8th place and has dropped Byron from that earlier fight that they were all in. Skrillex is dropping Rybecki as well. That gap was well under a second for the majority of the time that Rybecki was in P2, but now it's 1.5 seconds. Jordan Daly, the Just Gamers 197 down the pit lane. That is the first of our front runners to come in, John.
Yeah, first of our front runners indeed. Maybe Daly trying to, pull down the pit lane a little bit earlier, release Lindgren and Boardman, maybe even allow Boardman to have a shot at Lindgren if, his pace manages to drop from not being able to follow another driver. Some drivers are like that. They can only drive quite fast in kind of packs. They almost mirror the car ahead, and they find some kind of pace that they never quite had earlier on in the race. So maybe Boardman can have a chop at Lindgren while Daly's in the pit lane, of course, chilling, taking some fuel on, maybe even a set of tyres coming out and seeing if he can get the tyres switched on. Of course, the ACC taking a little while to warm up the Pirellis. Sometimes Ash Bibby saying maybe Jordan Daly's even enjoying a cup of Yorkshire tea as he comes down the pit lane, possibly even in the drinks bottle of the car there. Raphael Huell to the inside of Hubert Hauser into the second turn there. Of course, we did say it was a popular passing place, turn 1, but turn 2, not often where you see the pass being made, but a fantastic move there from Raphael Huell. Saw the gap and just absolutely sent it on Hubert Hauser. Meanwhile, Les Stevenson, we saw he was out of contention, didn't we, Jesse Lee, in lap 2. He's now found his way back past Tim Ireland. He's now back into the fight, trying to catch up to the field.
Yeah, he is. Les Stevenson was running 20th at the end of, I think, lap 2. He was well off the back of the train of cars, and he's somehow been able to manage that gap and get all the way back up into 16th place. This is the splitter of the 141 Tim Ireland Jaguar, looking up at Les Stevenson at the Roker Poker's face, sort of trying to figure out where maybe he can get a little bit more speed, get up there and race Tim Ireland. Those two, I believe, if I look, are actually in communication. Most of the Jag drivers, for those of you watching at home, are in a chat together right now, public chat here on the Racing Club International Discord. And not a lot of the Aston drivers are, but a lot of the Jag drivers are all in the same chat. These two are Tim Ireland and Les Stevenson, and they are communicating amongst themselves. And I wonder perhaps what maybe the conversation, if any, going back and forth. Christian Lindgren, Ted Edwards have pitted as well, out of 8th and I think it was 9th at the time, respectively. Cubed Lettuce has been going off in chat. He's been riding and dying with us, has Cubed Lettuce. Nail biting whenever things get a little bit hairy in the corners. Gave an attaboy to, I believe, was it Boardman who went off the racetrack, or was that Mike Redford? That might have been Mike Redford, in fact. But yeah, we see you, Cube. Thank you for joining us and chatting with us. Trust me, we're doing the same thing up here in the booth, except that we're just verbalizing it.
Yeah, absolutely so. It looks like Daly has had a slightly slow pit stop, Jesse. I was looking at this thinking it looked a little bit slower than everybody else on the board. 1 minute 9 on my end from pit in to pit out. Mike Redford in comparison, 43 seconds just over. Of course, Les Stevenson 35 just over. Raphael Kuhl 48, but you can minus 5 off of him, of course, for the penalty. Ted Edwards also with a slow stop, a 1 minute 10. Christian Lindgren with a 42.5. All of this is roughly measured from pit in to pit out. So, of course, we have to take a bit of an educated guess of what went on between in the middle when they did stop at the team garage. Of course, I would say, and I'd be taking an educated guess here, Daly and Edwards with their slowest stops of 1 minute 9, 1 minute 10, they've taken a fresh set of tyres. So we're going to have to see, of course, in about 20 minutes time or so,
I've got an idea.
When the old tyres drop off, will we see electric pace from Daly and Edwards?
I've got an idea.
Go on, Jesse.
Be back in a minute.
He's running. He's running away to ask them. I think they're sat in another Discord somewhere that Jesse has access to. He's just going to go and ask them, get it straight from the horse's mouth, almost like a pit lane reporter. Jesse Lee runs back into the booth. Jesse, what have you got for us?
Yeah, they definitely took tires. I was down. I need to work on my cardio. They definitely both took tires. Back to you, John.
Yep, so educated guess was right. Of course, 2 Astons now at the back of the grid. Jordan Daly and Ted Edwards, P17, P19, both on a fresh set of Pirellis. We know Christian Lindgren, by that logic, with his fast stop of a 43.5, he hasn't taken a set of tyres. So keep your eye on Christian Lindgren, P11. Keep your eye on Jordan Daly, P17. And in about 20 minutes' time, Jesse, I think it's all going to come to blows again once these two meet back on track.
Man, I got to get back to the gym. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what the winter's done to me, but I got to get back. I got to get back in shape. That was just a couple of flights of stairs did that to me. But yeah, they both confirmed they did take tires. I think that's the difference between the 2 pit stops that you're going to see there, and I think it's going to be a common thread with a lot of the Astons rather. I don't think the Jaags will have to do that or will be as hard pressed as the Astons will. The question now for me is, will there be Astons that don't take tires, and how slow will those lap times be at the end? Because if you don't take tires and you know you're in an Aston and it's wearing the tires a bit more inefficiently than the Jaags, you're going to put yourself in a horrible position. You may have straight line speed, but when you get to the corner, you're basically going to have to park the thing to get it to turn. It's a catch-22 situation, and if this entire season is like this is going to create some very interesting racing, chess-like behavior out here at Suzuka right now.
Yeah, isn't it? It's almost like responding to your opponent. Of course, a lot of drivers won't know what's going on. Again, these weeknight league races aren't particularly full of team support. When you look back to Saturday, of course, when we hosted the 6 Hours of the Nordschleife, of course, a lot of drivers having spotters, having teammates to kind of, spy on the grid, help them along the way, help them make informed decisions about, cars coming up, traffic behind them, what the opponent that they're chasing down is doing. Will they pit for wets? Will they pit for dries? Of course, we did see some changeable weather on Saturday as well. And here you don't really have that. You are just kind of one driver normally, just kind of, driving for the 1 hour. And of course, in the case of Jordan Daly and Ted Edwards sat in a Discord call together, again, they can kind of talk amongst themselves on what they're going to do, how much fuel they're going to put in. Will they both take tires? Will one car take tires and the other won't? It's all in kind of theory for us up here in the up here in the box. We do have to kind of theory craft a lot of what is going on down there, but a lot of the time you can take some educated guesses on this one. Of course, race leader Spoda Skrillex still yet to pit. 10.7 seconds to the good of Andy Boardman, the top place Jaguar just behind. Adam Romaniuk still out yet to take their mandatory stop, along with Tom Shipston, Neil Pimlott and Marco Fucuscio. A few more drivers dotted around the field. Kevin Boss, Aaron Jackson, Les Stevenson and Tim Ireland also yet to take their pit stop. So about half the grid, I would say, has pitted. Christian Lindgren, of course, the highest placed man on the road when he came in from about P3 or P4, I believe, just behind, of course, the Jordan Daly, just gamers number 197. But Tom Shipston looking very confident at the moment, chasing down Adam Romaniuk. You can see him just out of sight of the shot. And Christian Lindgren, meanwhile, behind Aaron Jackson. Again, Jackson still yet to pit, so 10 minutes on the clock for Jackson. He can go another 4 laps or so, Jesse, before Lindgren, of course, has to worry. But I feel like the pit stop is going to be imminent, because if you leave it too late, it's, you know, you don't get the benefits of pitting that late, do you? Especially if you're going to take tyres, or you're wondering about taking tyres. You really had to take them probably about 5 minutes ago at the very latest. And you see here the V12 power, I think Christian Lindgren has lifted ever so slightly, knowing that Jackson is, of course, coming into the lane either this lap or next into the Cassia Triangle. Christian Lindgren really not trying too hard. Of course, we saw the moves being sent on Jordan Daly just a few moments ago, and Jackson will stay out for another lap. So this is going to be hard for Lindgren. Of course, he doesn't want to make a move and, you know, put both of them around, but at the same time, he doesn't want to waste time, and he pulls out of the slipstream down into turn 1. Side by side they will go. The overlap is there ever so slightly. Last of the late breakers, Christian Lindgren. Aaron Jackson thinks about trying to go around the outside, pulls out of it, tries to do the old up and under, but Lindgren just about has that one signed, sealed and delivered. Lindgren up into P8. Jackson now down into P9 with a big slide through the S's, indeed.
Well, that was very close. I think what happened there was Jackson was more than happy just to let Lindgren go, just to keep himself from being held up. And because the Jag has a little bit of an advantage in the twisties, he, I suppose, expected the V12 to sort of take off. And when he didn't, he had to hit the brake. He had to touch the brake an extra little time. And that would frustrate you if you try to do a good thing like Jackson was, and you still get held up. You got to know what the gaps are. And, of course, a lot of these drivers, they're experiencing this for the very first time. They will have practiced these cars for the past week or two, but they wouldn't have known what an actual race scenario would have been like with the other class of car or the other manufacturer of car. They're the same class. They're both GT3 machinery, albeit outdated. So you don't really know that until you know, and the only way to know that is to race it. So Jackson did everything right there. Just doesn't want to be held up, trying to preserve his battle for his position, realizes Lindgren isn't it. Lindgren gets up to P8 and is the leading car of the cars that have pitted. Here comes Andy Boardman. Now, I was going to say, I didn't expect Boardman to come in until incredibly late in this race, but that hasn't happened. That theory is not going to come to pass, because the leading Jaguar, the number 69, in the pit lane now.
Indeed, Andy Boardman down the pit lane, and Roy Becky looking at his pit stop time as well, Jesse. Looks like another Aston choosing a fresh set of Pirelli, so keep your eye on the Connection Lost racing car, currently down in P11. Of course, they were up into P2 before the pit stop cycle came around. Jordan Daly just capitalising there on Les Stevenson. I'm sure Les, some very heads-up, sensible driving, probably hasn't fought that one all too much. Again, two very different drivers on pace here, but can each hold their own in a fight amongst others. Jordan Daly up into P13, Les Stevenson down into P14 now, and of course a few more cars coming down the lane. Marco Fucuscio and Aaron Jackson. Meanwhile, Christian Lindgren has now caught the back of Kevin Boss, and with him just behind Jesse, it's Andy Boardman. He hasn't managed to get the jump in the pit lane, but of course, looking towards the pit stop time, Boardman equally hasn't taken tyres either. So we're going to see an old set of Aston tyres versus an old set of Jag tyres in this late game. And a hip and shoulder there from Christian Lindgren pushes Kevin Boss ever so slightly wide. And Christian Lindgren hustling up the inside, really wants to get a move on, escape the jaws of Andy Boardman, and there's lots of contact going on at the moment. Live stewards aren't going to be too happy with this one, but Kevin Boss still not giving up. Boss is off. Can he get it back under control? He does. Avoids the Jaguar of Andy Boardman. That could have been very nasty indeed, but kudos to Kevin there for keeping the really slow racing team under control and out of trouble.
Oh, that was absolutely squeaky bum time there for everybody involved. How many times have we seen that in the hairpin? A car gets sideways off into that grass and they can't recover it, but that is very well driven by the Dutch driver, Kevin Boss, and now he's going to be sort of moved a little bit off of the racing line of Spoon, and that's going to allow Boardman back through, and Boardman now up into that position. And here is Boss now, the last of the leading group of cars that is not taken their pit stop list. Stevenson and Mike Redford also without a pit stop done here. Here it is. This started all the way back in the Dunlop curve area and gets a little bit wide, a little bit squirrely in the Degners there, and that's what sets up that incident. Additional contact that'll frustrate Kevin Boss. And I gotta say, these cars, here's the end of this incident there. Oh, just trying to turn in there was Kevin Boss. And this is the problem. If you are a car, John, that have done their pit stop and you're making your way through the back half of the cars that haven't, you've got to take loving care, because if you don't, this is live stewarded. These stewards are not going to look very fondly on these cars making these contacts, forcing other cars off of the racetrack into perilous situations, and that could be very bad. And here we go again, contact Ted Edwards. It was a bad exit for, who was that in front of him, that green car?
Aaron Jackson.
That's Aaron Jackson. Ted Edwards lays up for him, but even still, Ted Edwards got the better run through there and nearly pushed Aaron Jackson through that corner.
Absolutely so. I mean, Action Jackson aplenty tonight for the number 99 there in the walls once again, with Ted Edwards coming out of the Casio triangle. Looked like the V12 just got a better drive off the corner. Just got to bear in mind Ted Edwards is of course on a fresh set of Pirellis. Again, 1 minute 10 pit stop into out. Aaron Jackson 42 seconds pit stop into out. So again, that's going to be an old set versus a new set. And you know, the drive off the corner that Ted had, I don't even think Ted was expecting to catch Jackson so quickly, and just really caught him off guard, almost pushing through him as they both jumped on the power out of the corner. But again, Ted laying up, kind of letting the position return back to normal. Again, that's favoured in the eyes of the stewards. If you rectify your wrong, penalties will be less. It will be, you know, looked upon as a goodwill almost against you, and certainly reduce down that penalty a little bit. Kevin Boss, next car up in the sights for Ted Edwards. Looking at pit stop timer again, 42 seconds into out for Kevin Boss. So again, this is going to be an old set versus a new set. Of course, Rybecki currently P8, Jordan Daly P9. All three cars that we're mentioning here, including Ted Edwards, on a fresh set of tyres. So keep your eyes peeled on them. Of course, Raphael Huell and Andy Boardman are on an old set of tyres. Of course, Christian Lindgren equally on an old set of Pirellis as well. So will we see the Pirellis be a real benefit? And Spoda Skrillex still out front, Jesse. He's leaving it very late to pit, is the number 200. Of course, here coming through, this is turn 12, I believe, up into the Spoon corner, Spoon 1, Spoon 2. Of course, very late to take tyres at this stage, under 20 minutes to go, just over 17 and a half minutes. So by the time you get these tyres switched on, you're only really going to have 15 minutes. And again, the car is going to be at the lightest it has ever been, as we see a replay here. This was Ted Edwards and Aaron Jackson. It looked like Jackson just struggled to get the power down.
That actually looked worse from the helicopter cam. That looked less... it looked like less contact from the trackside cam. That looked worse from the overhead. I didn't realize what had actually gone on. Ted was able to get under him, and it led to the contact. Hit him with the old double tap. He's not a zombie. That will not work. And eventually they were able to sort it out, though. Eventually so, indeed. And Stewart's probably, like we say, looking very good in the favour of Ted Edwards, should we say, as Spoda Skrillex comes down the lane. Hopefully there's not going to be a fresh set of Pirellis on that car, because you're not really going to get the maximum use out of them, are you, Jesse? You know, ideally, you want to be pitting about half an hour through, or half an hour to go, maybe even 25 minutes at a push. But I think at this stage, by the time you come out, you're going to have about 15 minutes or so on the clock. It's not really going to be enough to truly get those Pirellis switched on and in the magical window. And of course, Adam Romaniuk and Tom Shipston also peel down the pit lane. So logically, Christian Lindgren should take over a few cars. Spoda Skrillex might be safe. Of course, the mandatory stop has cleared, so the driver is on their way out of pit lane. You can see the triangle at the north side of the circuit map, and Spoda Skrillex way underway before the next group of cars,
even come through turn 18. Of course, Andy Boardman there, and I think Boardman and Lindgren have managed to jump. They have indeed. Tom Shipston and Adam Romaniuk, Raphael Huell equally managing to gain a few positions, but I think Rybecki isn't close enough to jump either of them. He might just about jump one of them, looking at the circuit map side by side, possibly into turn 1. Currently the number 127 and the 29. Rybecki has managed to do Adam Romaniuk through turn 1, and that now sets him up towards the back of Raphael Huell. So Rybecki on a fresh set of tyres, and everybody ahead of him, Jesse, on an old set of Pirelli. So 15.5 minutes on the clock. What can the number 127 do now?
Yep, that's the question. What can they do? What can Boardman, what can Raphael Huell do in the Jaguar camp as well? Everything is sort of reset a little bit. Andy Boardman is up into P3, and they're hunting Christian Lindgren now. These are both old tires, but as we've said throughout the broadcast, the old tires on Boardman's car, theoretically, according to the Jag drivers, should be better than old tires on the V12. This is a straight up fight as you were, but we're into the final 15 minutes where we expect the most tire fall off, and we'll see, is the straight line, is the ability to leave a corner and get that straight line speed like the V12 has done all race, is that sort of diminished a little bit? Is the grip in the corner super OP now of the Jag versus old V12 tires? We're about to have that answer. What I do know is we have Boardman and Huell. They're separated by about 4 seconds right now as we are getting ready to go through 130R. So they're still technically on the same straight together here. And if Boardman can make life difficult for Lindgren, Huell may be able to get up there and take another podium spot away as well. That's a load of points for Team Jag and a huge feather in their cap. I don't think anybody is catching Spoda Skrillex. That's 11 to 12 seconds, maybe a little bit more now. That might be a little bit too big of a gap, too big of an ask with 14 minutes left to go. Spoda Skrillex has run just a fantastic race thus far, and I just feel that he's put himself out of reach for the rest of the field.
Fingers crossed, Kirsten, the commentator, isn't about to happen. I'm gripping onto the desk in front of me.
Oh, why did I say that? Yeah, that was
dumb.
Of
course, get to the end. Of course, like I say, Jesse, run a commanding race so far, and we're starting to see another train forming here. This is Kevin Boss at the head of this one, followed by Aaron Jackson. Boss goes wide and wide. Just behind as well. So again, 2 Jags versus 1 Aston. We're going to see who much better in the corners, but with the toe of Kevin Boss ahead, Aaron Jackson has managed to fend off the V12, but makes it awkward for the Team Jag going into turn 1. Boss has to check up to avoid running into the back of Aaron Jackson as Byron comes out. He's looking at the back of these 2 Jags, probably similar to how Andy Boardman was looking to the back of 2 Astons earlier on, rubbing his hands with glee, praying that Friendly Fire could promote himself up into P14.
Yep, close quarters racing here. A lot of positions on the line, and these drivers, as much as this is a manufacturer-based championship, the way it's been built, the way it's been set up, these drivers don't care anymore about manufacturer alliances, especially if you're in this huge group here. Shipston, Rybecki, Romaniuk, Daly, all these drivers, they don't care about that anymore. It's about overall position. How do I win a driver's championship? If there's one Jag, so what? It doesn't matter. Grim Lilith trying to sort of raise the flag for those cars a little bit further behind. Being held up here in this group a little bit behind all of them is Kevin Boss, who's keeping Byron behind them for the time being. Jackson driving away a little bit out in front here. 200R defensive line from Kevin Boss, but it may be too little too late. Or is there enough here in Spoon? No. Through goes Byron, but he's going to be off of the racetrack. That allows Boss back down the middle, and he will have the grip, but unfortunately the V12 is going to get the run off of Spoon and up to 130R, but will the Jag be close enough to make a move here? I don't think so. Done and dusted. Byron up inside the top 15.
I think the 12 cylinders of Fury are enough to mount a defense against the Jaguar at the moment. Down into the Casio triangle, of course, Boss not close enough, and with the big start-finish straight ahead, in theory, Byron should pull out a gap, although Boss with the slipstream may be able to stay just close enough, but it looks like the V12 has a much better exit out of the Casio triangle. So Byron should stay safe here. Focus himself onto the back of Jackson ahead in the number 99. 1.1 seconds to the good at the moment. Meanwhile, at the head of the field, of course, Spoda Skrillex still 13 seconds to the good on Christian Lindgren. Andy Boardman just a second or so back behind. With him, of course, Raphael Huell, 2.7 seconds. Now the gap is closing down all the time. And Tom Shipston, I think Rybecki has passed Shipston, if I'm right in saying here, Jesse.
Let's see. Rybecki is up into 5th place. It's been like that for just a little while, but he's in 5th overall and 6.3 down to Raphael Huell in the Jaag. Speaking of Raphael Huell, that gap was over 3 seconds. It's closing down to Boardman, as Boardman is being held up a little bit, or at least they were at the time, being held up by Christian Lindgren in front, and that is allowing Raphael Huell to get involved as well. That, again, is sort of what I was talking about. If Boardman could get around and sort of harass Lindgren, that would help Huell, and that kind of has happened. Call it 2.8 seconds back to Huell in 4th place. That's not too big of a gap with 10 minutes left. If Boardman continues to harass Christian, then it's going to be on, and all that does, of course, is help Spoda Skrillex continue to lengthen their lead. 13 plus seconds last time we checked. It's definitely 13.5 now. So looks like Andy Boardman hauling the mail for the Jaag group right now. And as we get closer to the end of this race, just want to say thank all of you for joining us here today for the newest championship, one of the most interesting championships I think we've ever had here at RCI, Jaag versus V12. Looks like you guys are having fun in chat. We're having fun bringing it to you as well. It's one of those champs where you wouldn't think of doing something quite like this, but it has come off quite nicely. We've got both of the manufacturers represented inside the top 3. It's 2 Astons and 2 Jaags. That's not bad. I think this is going to be a very interesting championship down the stretch.
Yeah, I think it will be a very good championship, of course, as we get later on down the calendar. Of course, round 1 tonight at Suzuka. Every Monday night we'll be hosting a race right up until the season finale when we reach Laguna Seca. That's on June 3rd. So round 2 finds ourselves in Italy for Misano. Round 3 we head stateside to the Circuit of the Americas. That's going to be an interesting round with these old machineries on a new track. Of course, lots of wary track limits at the Circuit of Americas always catches people out. Round 4, we head to Zolder. Of course, the mountainous curbs through the chicanes. That's going to be another interesting one for these old machines to tackle. And then Watkins Glen, round 5. Again, big, long straights, big, long power sections for these V12s really to stretch their legs before, of course, rounding out at Laguna Seca. A much more twistier track, so we should see the Jaags coming back into the form there. But Misano next week, Jesse, that's going to be a V12 track if ever I say it. Of course, you've got the big, long kind of back straight with a few kinks in it, but the V12 is really going to be able to stretch its legs there.
It is, but it's going to have the same problem it has here at Suzuka. It's going to struggle in sectors 1 and 3 because that is all twisty stuff. Yes, there's a straight that connects, was it turn 4 to turn 6, but or excuse me, turn 4 to turn 5, somewhere in there. But I think it's going to be a little bit closer than we might imagine. That big long dogleg back straight is definitely going to be V12 country. I think the rest of the track, though, we're going to have a similar thing. I think it's going to be a Jaag 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 sector. The middle sector, though, I think is going to make up for it. It's going to be quite close indeed. It's been quite close between a couple of these drivers all day long. Mike Redford leads Ted Edwards for 11th place. But Ted has had a couple of looks, a couple of sniffs, and in fact, he's having one right now. No defensive move here from Mike Redford. And now he does defensively to the middle of the racetrack, gives the outside to Edwards. Edwards is going to send it. He's going to absolutely Hail Mary it into turn 1, and it's not going to come off. A little bit of rubbing there, and it's going to be Redford exiting the turn 1 complex, and immediately back on him is Ted Edwards, looking up the S's, looks to the inside, nothing doing. Following in his tire tracks now, not a whole lot extra he can do in this section. The lights flashing on the V12 up to the 95 of Mike Redford saying, hey, I'm trying to race you here and trying to play a little bit of the mind games as we exit the snake and we go through the Dunlop corner. Looks like Edwards has a little bit more speed, but just defensively placed as Mike Redford as we enter the Degners this time.
Yeah, through the Degners they go, still very close indeed. And looking at the pit stop timers, Jesse, Mike Redford didn't take tyres. Ted Edwards has taken tyres, but this is the problem. When you do take tyres, it's all very well catching somebody, Jesse.
Oh!
You've got to get away from us. We saw a mistake there from Mike Redford as we cut to the race replay, but this is the battle we saw into turn one. Ted around the outside, clipped twice, I think, Mike Redford
How
there.
often
I caught
do you
two
see
contacts.
How often do you see something like that? The car going around the outside is the one clipping the car on the inside and just sort of rubbing. We saw as we went to that replay in the hairpin that it looked like Redford spun the tires exiting that hairpin, but it has not led, or maybe it has as we continue to, no, it has not led to a pass. Somehow, Mike Redford was able to hang on to that in 200R and didn't give it up in Spoon either. And now we rejoin you live pictures in 130R, and they're still the way they went in there. I have no idea, in my wildest imagination, how the 95 Mike Racing Aston is still in front of the Race Ventura Aston after that. I thought Mike Redford would have been dead to rights.
Yeah, he's certainly hanging on to that one, isn't he? And I was going to say, it's all very well, you know, having these fresh tyres and catching your rivals, but you have to get around them. And Andy Boardman with contact on Christian Lindgren, that's allowed Raphael Huell to catch up, and Rybecki coming into the shot as well. So this now is for third, fourth, and fifth, with Rybecki now coming into the shot. Of course, Rybecki there completely unsighted on Christian Lindgren. I'd say Rybecki possibly, Jesse, uses a bit of a narrower field of view, or possibly maybe even the A-pillar of the Aston just being in the way when he turned into the corner. Meanwhile, Adam Romaniuk and Jordan Daly coming to blows in the Casio Triangle. There's lots of friendly fire going on between these Aston Martin boys tonight, and Jordan Daly finds his way through on Romaniuk by the looks of it. Meanwhile, another episode of Initial T, this time down into turn two. There was a gap. There's contact. Ted Edwards sideways, struggles to get it back under control coming off the curb. And I really hope that was a bit of a graphical glitch where we saw two cars kind of teleport into the shot. Let's have a look. It wasn't, no. Wow, Matthias Byron being caught out there by Ted's rejoin, and Byron finds his way to the outside wall. Kevin Boss goes back through. Byron down to P16. Stewards are going to have a little bit of overtime to do, I'd say, Jesse, tonight after that one. But a few more stewards reports have come in, mainly lap 19, turn 9, 11, and 12, all involving the 48 and the 31. So that was Christian Lindgren, the 31 of Kevin Boss. Not sure if that's particularly right on the stewards report, but nonetheless, turn 9, 11, and 12, racing incident, minor contact. Lap 19, turn 18, involving the 99 and the 8. It was a warning for car number 8. And lastly, lap 26, turn 1, involving the 95 and the 8. That was Ted Edwards and Mike Redford. Racing incident, minor contact. So that was the first part. I think we saw the double bump, should we say, as Ted went round the outside. But of course, Stewart's still yet to look at the second incident. Meanwhile, this is the battle, isn't it, for the bottom step of the podium right now. Christian Lindgren, of course, ahead, Rybecki in the middle, and Andy Boardman at the back. Of course, this one's anybody's race, of course, as we come to the final stages. Spoda Skrillex currently coming through Spoon 1 and 2, so we may get another 2 laps out of this. I'm not sure on the timings from Spoon to the line, but it's going to be very close on going by another lap, but with 19 seconds of a lead over Raphael Huell, I think Spoda Skrillex might lift ever so slightly on the last lap just to tick by to the checkered flag.
Well, this has gone into drama mode. I'll tell you this tonight. There's a lot of solidarity in that Jaguar camp. There's going to be absolutely zero solidarity in the Aston camp. There's going to be that meme of Spider-Man pointing the finger at the other Spider-Man. It's going to be all V12s pointing at each other going, you did this and you did this. Because of that, we've now got the 3 Jaguars, at least 3 Jaguars, back inside the top 10. Remember, Grim Lilith was down in like 9th or 10th. Oh, and more contact here. Jag on Jag. And this is not what you want to see. Lindgren and Rybecki going at it as we are coming around. Oh, it's going to be real close on time if we get an additional lap. Hello to Jason in chat. Hello to Martin Lawrence, who asked the question what happened between Boardman and Lindgren, and immediately got the answer on the replay. And I will say to our broadcaster Ash, We did not curse it. Oh, they're going to be side by side here, but Lindgren's going to prevail. We didn't curse it because all I said was that Spoda Skrillex had such a lead that I think it was insurmountable, and it's looking like the case. I didn't mention anything else, so if there was any sort of cursing going on, that was all to do with my partner, John Dalton. Christian Lindgren playing with fire right here, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's Rybecki playing with fire. They've got a Jaguar right behind them. Let's see what happened here in the triangle. Contact there on the entry, a little bit slower in. Rybecki reckons Lindgren could have went quicker. And you can see that Jag just hanging out there right behind that fight. Andy Boardman looking to make up some of those spots.
Yeah, Rybecki there, slight understeer through Degner 2. That's got him back into the jaws of Boardman. Boardman looks to the inside, but just doesn't have enough on him. Of course, Rybecki is on a fresher set of tyres than these drivers in the sandwich, shall we say. Of course, Christian Lindgren not taking tyres. Andy Boardman also on an old set of Pirellis, and Rybecki on a slightly fresher set, shall we say, as Spoda Skrillex comes through 130R. I think he's probably going to lift coming out of the Casio Triangle. He has such a commanding lead on fuel. He's only just coming out of Spoon 2. I'll be amazed if Spoda Skrillex does go another time by. I think this is it. This is the last lap. Spoda Skrillex is coming towards the line. He will take the round 1 victory here at Suzuka for Team Jaag versus Team V12. And V12 certainly looking very commanding indeed at the moment. But Raphael Huell, despite the 5-second penalty, Jesse, despite the elongated pit stop, as we see a few late penalties coming in here, Raphael Huell will come through to take the next step of the podium for Team Jaag. And in the background, Christian Lindgren with a 5-second penalty. Rybecki has done just enough to get themselves on to the podium. Andy Boardman with a 10-second penalty. That might shuffle him down behind Tom Shipston and Jordan Daly and possibly even Adam Romagnoc. The results have been flipped on their head, Jesse. I'm going to turn over to the stewards to see what this is all about.
Yeah, there's so many incidents there in the last couple of laps, wasn't it, John, that it was almost inevitable. That was quick acting by the stewards to get some of those earlier ones in that happened 2 or 3 laps ago, to at least that they make sure they had less work post-race. So that has completely changed some of the finishing positions, and that definitely hurt the Jag team right there, as they're going to drop many positions. This is how they finish on the scoring pylon to your left. When we go to the results, once they're finalized, you'll see the actual positions that take into account all of the time penalties that have occurred. Everybody coming to the line. It's Skrillex over Huell and Lindgren. That is your podium, but it won't be like that. It'll be Skrillex, Huell, and Rybecki your podium, but that will be the way it is overall. It'll be Skrillex, Rybecki, Lindgren, the top 3 in the Aston V12 club. And it should still be Huell, Boardman, and Grim Lilith, your top 3 in the Jaguar club, albeit a little bit of chaos there at the end. The final few cars coming across the line, and it was a 10-second penalty for car 69 for making the 48 spin into turn 12 on lap 26. It was a 5-second penalty for an unsafe rejoin of car 48 on the same lap, same corner. I think we saw that as well. Racing incident between the 95 and the 8, and a racing incident between the 197 and the 29. And I hate having to say this, but I will say it. All of this pending post-race penalty. Skrillex, your winner over Huell and Rybecki here today. Jordan Daly with the quickest lap, helping the V12 camp out a little bit as well. It was a chaotic race throughout, John, but that finish was over the top.
Yeah, the finish with the late penalties, of course, we thought it was all kind of signed, sealed, and delivered. Unfortunately, of course, the stewards having their hand in that one. It was all going so well. It seemed like everybody woke up towards the end and thought, hang on a minute, I've not made enough positions here. Let's try and make some pace. And as you touched on, Jesse, of course, a few late ones coming through. Lap 26, turn 12, involving the 48 and the 69. It was a 10-second for the 69 for making the 48 spin, but position returned. It was then lap 26, turn 12, involving the 127 and the 48. It was a 5 seconds for the 48 for an unsafe rejoin. Lap 26, turn 9, that was involving the 95 and the 8 was a racing incident, so that was Mike Redford and Ted Edwards again. Lap 26, turn 18, involving the 197 and the 29 was also a racing incident. and then we have a few more coming through from our chief steward tonight. Lap 27, turn 2, involving the 8 and the 95, of course, racing incident. That was the contact between the Ted Edwards and Mike Redford cars. Neither driver deemed predominantly at fault initially. Lap 27, turn 2, involving the 100 and the 8. It was a 20 seconds for car number 8 for an unsafe rejoin. Of course, that was Ted Edwards on Matthias Byron. And then lap 28, turn 18, involving the 48, the 127 racing incident. And lap 29, turn 5, involving the 127 and the 48. Once again, a racing incident. And officially signed off from McKenna McConnell tonight. End of reports, Jesse. So, live stewards are done with their analysis of the race. Of course, everything that has been reported has been analysed and closed. However, of course, stewards' reports are still open post-race, and it's up to drivers, of course, to upload those to the RCI website and make a case for the stewards to go through before next week. So, as you said, Jesse, of course, results are subject to change, but I don't think neither of us could have predicted how action-packed the first round would have been here.
Ultimately, it came down. It was sort of close. Had Spotter Skrillex not had the huge lead that he had because everybody was fighting over P2 and P3, which is what caused quite such a large gap. No discredit to Skrillex's skills. They clearly were the dominant car, but because everybody behind them were squabbling, Skrillex was able to drive away. We had multiple different Astons and different Jaags all fighting over P2. That sort of allowed them to escape. But outside of that, these drivers in both manufacturers were all over each other. If this season is going to be like this, man, it is going to be drama-filled, but it's also going to be very enthralling to watch. All those little contacts, John, that we saw there in the last 5 minutes, all that is because nobody made the ultimate mistake of throwing it off the road up to that point. That led to a bunch of cars, different strategies, taking tires, not taking tires, different power plants, etc. All that came together to create the drivers and the teams out of position of where they felt they should have been running, and it was an enthralling start. Unfortunately, came to blows a bunch as well.
Yeah, it came to blows a bunch, not only between manufacturers, but also the friendly fire between, Aston and Jaaag on Jaaag at times. It was pretty action-packed. Mike Redford posting his tyre data in the chat, the lowest tyre being the right rear, 1.77 overall. Some light graining across the front, but nothing on the rear. So, Aston's semi looked after their tyres. I'd be curious to see a result from the one of the Jaguar drivers to see what happened to those. And of course, we have been running a poll in the YouTube chat, courtesy of Ash Bibby, which is better. 85% of viewers are on Team Aston and only 14% are on Team Jaaag. Total of 14 votes cast. So thank you very much, guys, for getting involved in that one. It seems the viewers at home much prefer the V12. We'll have to run the same poll next week to see what happens. I was
just thinking that, yeah.
And see if the audience changes at all, judging by, of course, the maybe by the dominance of the Aston Martin today. Maybe some people picking the more favoured side on that one. But we'd like to thank all of you at home, of course, for joining us tonight, and some fantastic scenes on RCI TV as always, and our very own event admin Tim Ireland on your screen at the moment in the Silk Cut themed Jaguar, cooking up this concoction. So kudos to him on that one. Of course, not only thank you to you guys at home for joining us, but of course a big thank you to all of our partners who have been scrolling across the screen in the bottom left hand side. Of course, AK Esports, a leading Italian company in esports management and organization across the world, not only of course working with Porsche Esports, SRO, Delara and many other brands, but also working with us here at RCI to provide our fantastic server solutions. Driver61.com, where you can, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code and by following the link in the description below. Fanatec, again, needs no introduction. Everybody knows who they are. We do have an affiliate link down below if you are looking to pick up any new hardware, which will sprinkle a few pennies in the pot here at RCI and won't cost you a single penny as the buyer. And two new partners, of course, joined us just last year. DigitalMotorsports.com, offering a number of products and services from all the way from virtual driving experiences, corporate events, to complete, turnkey sim rig solutions. Founded in 2018 by two enthusiastic motorsports fans, they, of course, had a vision to create Ireland's leading digital motorsport environment and resource. Be sure to check them out if you think they can help you at all. And lastly, but no means least, of course, Go Setups formed to be one of the premium esports setup stores for ACC. Their primary aim, of course, to create setups for all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or just looking for a safer alternative for your favorite car. And I say this every time, Jesse, they do have a Jaguar pack. So if anybody's watching back this broadcast and has struggled a little bit here at Suzuka, you want to turn your season around, be sure to head on over to their website and pick that one up, because I'm sure you won't have moments like Kevin Boss there through Degner 2, nearly losing control of the car. But tonight, Jesse, it's been action-packed. I, for one, cannot wait to see what Mizano is, of course, going to bring us next time out. And, of course, we'll be bringing you all the action here on RCI TV. Remember to head on over to the website, racerci.com, where you can see all of our events anytime, day or night. So if you do want to get involved with the Team Jaaag versus Team V12 fight, that's exactly where you can put your name down. Of course, Thursday this week, we do have iRacing IMSA Season 2. That's continuing at Portimao. And Friday, of course, we'll continue our GT2 Season 2, heading into Donington Park for their penultimate round. Christoph Verstappen leading dominantly in Pro from Grim Lilith and Andy Boardman after a dominant win at the Nordschleife. And a silver, meanwhile, hotly contested still by Peter Varga, Kevin Boss, with an equal point tie for third between Mike Jones and Fabian Hunderhager. So that fight isn't over either. So be sure to tune back into RCI TV to see how those events go down. But from myself, John Dalton, from, of course, Jesse Lee alongside me, and from Ash Bibby behind the cameras, and, of course, all of our live stewards next door to us, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us. We hope you had a wonderful evening on the broadcast, and we hope to see you very soon again on RCI TV. Take care.
Jag.